They had the kind of marriage people envied, until everything started to fall apart. And by the time it was over, it had turned into something no one expected. In the early years, Betty Broderick and her husband seemed to have it all: a growing family, a comfortable life, and a future that looked secure. She supported him through everything, through long nights, through law school, through the years it took to build a career, standing by his side, believing in what they were building together. And eventually, it paid off. Success came, money came, stability came. But along with it, something else began to change. At first, it was small things: less time at home, more distance. Conversations that didn't feel the same anymore, nothing obvious, but enough to notice. The kind of change that's hard to explain, but impossible to ignore. The kind that makes you start asking questions, even when you don't want the answers. And eventually, those questions started to lead somewhere. Late nights that didn't add up, excuses that didn't feel right, a growing feeling that something was being hidden. Because sometimes, you don't need proof to feel it. You just know something has changed. And in this case, that feeling would turn out to be right, but what she was about to discover would change everything. Because the life they built together was already starting to fall apart. She just didn't know how far it would go. At first, the signs were easy to dismiss. Work had become demanding. Schedules had changed. It all sounded reasonable until it didn't anymore. The late nights became more frequent. The conversations became shorter. And the connection that once felt natural started to feel forced. It wasn't just what was happening, it was what wasn't. The small things that disappeared, the attention, the effort, the feeling of being seen. And eventually, the suspicion became too strong to ignore, because when something changes this much, there's usually a reason. The truth didn't come all at once. It came in pieces. A name mentioned too casually, a detail that didn't match, a moment that lingered just a little too long. Until finally, those pieces started to come together, and what they formed was something she had been trying not to see. There was someone else, not just a suspicion anymore, not just a feeling, but a reality. And suddenly, everything made sense. The distance, the late nights, the change in behavior. It wasn't random, it was deliberate. But knowing the truth didn't make it easier. If anything, it made everything heavier. Because this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was the beginning of something much worse. When the truth could no longer be ignored, everything changed. The conversations weren't quiet anymore. They weren't careful. They became direct, heavy, impossible to avoid. What started as questions turned into accusations. What started as confusion turned into anger. Because once the truth is out, there's no going back. And eventually, the word no one wanted to say out loud became real: divorce. But this wasn't a quiet separation. It wasn't mutual. It wasn't peaceful. It was complicated, emotional, and deeply personal. Because for her, this wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the collapse of everything she had built. Every year, every sacrifice, every moment that led to this. And for him, it was a new beginning, a different life, a different future, one that didn't include the past. That contrast created something dangerous. Because while one person was moving forward, the other was still holding on. And over time, the situation didn't calm down, it escalated. Arguments became more intense, emotions became harder to control. The tension never really left. Because this wasn't just about the present anymore. It was about everything that had happened before. Everything that felt unfair. Everything that felt unresolved. Everything that couldn't be undone. And when emotions reach that level, logic doesn't always stay in control. Because what started as betrayal was about to turn into something no one could take back. By now, nothing about the situation felt stable anymore. The arguments hadn't stopped. The tension hadn't faded. If anything, it had been building quietly, constantly. What used to be conversations had turned into something else, shorter, sharper, more emotional than before, and harder to walk away from. Because when things reach this point, it's no longer just about what's happening now. It's about everything that led up to it, every unresolved moment, coming back at once. And then there was a moment, a point where everything shifted, where emotions took over and reason stepped back. What happened next changed everything, not just for them, but for everyone around them. In an instant, the situation went from emotional to irreversible. A line had been crossed that couldn't be undone. And just like that, what started as a relationship falling apart became something far more serious, something that would never be seen the same way again. The kind of moment people later look back on, trying to understand how it ever got that far, trying to find the exact point where things could have been different. But by then, it was already too late. Because what happened that night would go on to define everything that came after. After that moment, everything changed. What had once been a private relationship was now something everyone was talking about. The situation quickly moved beyond just two people. It became a case, a headline, a story that spread far beyond where it began. As more details came out, people started asking the same question: how did it get this far? Because when you look back at the beginning, it didn't seem like something that would end this way. It looked normal, familiar, even stable. But sometimes, it's not the big moments that change everything. It's the small ones, the ones that go unnoticed, until they start to add up. A conversation avoided, a feeling ignored, a truth delayed, each one pushing things a little further. Until eventually, there's a point where everything becomes too much, where emotions take over and decisions change everything. And in this case, that point couldn't be undone. What started as a relationship became a reminder of how quickly things can change when truth, emotion, and timing collide. Because stories like this don't just leave questions, they leave lessons about trust, about choices, and about how far things can go when they're left unresolved. So the question is, at what point do you think things could have been stopped?